guys, and welcome to MLBX TV show review of Netflix's Shadow and Bone. Now, I am jumping right in with the spoilers, so if you haven't read Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo or watched season 1 of Netflix's Shadow and Bone, leave. Leave right now. Go away. Unless you want the spoilers, then you can stay. Otherwise, go. Right out the gate, we open with these beautiful title sequences. They're short and they're sweet and they foreshadow every episode, but sometimes they also symbolize Grisha orders. We have Heartrender, Tidemaker, Inferni, and Sun Summoner, and Darkling. My only beef with these is that when you binge watch the show, Netflix has the audacity to skip them. Like, no, go back, that's an important part of the show. And of course I have to talk about the soundtrack. Every song fits so perfectly with the show, like this. It sounds exactly like the Crows doing a heist, and this. It sounds exactly like Mal and Alina. I am obsessed with these songs, and I listen to them more often than any normal person probably does. But when have I ever claimed to be normal? Anyways, getting back to the actual start of the show, we have Alina making a map! Like a good one! And it's such a small character change, but it does everything for the show. Like, later in the story, Alina's drawings become integral to finding the stag. So already we're starting off inaccurate, but improved. We also get a lot of exposition in the first episode, which is super helpful for non-readers. But what I really like about the exposition is that none of it felt over-explanatory or out of place. It all felt very natural and it flowed well with all of their conversations.
People trying to cross, taunting the saints.
Then why cross it? Why not go around?
Read them up. The North want our Grisha dead. The South guards its mountains. We have nowhere else to go.
So then it didn't feel repetitive or annoying to the readers who already know all of this information. We also get way more flashbacks in season 1 than we ever got in the books. And what I like about this is it helps to establish Mal and Alina as characters. It establishes Alina as more of a protector and Mal as more of a timid little kid, less of a player. Again, inaccurate but improved. Then we have this very necessary Mal shirtless fighting scene. Very necessary. Moving on, Mikkel and Dubrov. They were minuscule in the books, like such minor characters. But in the show, we really get the opportunity to flesh them out and find out who they are. And they became these amazing comic relief characters. And I loved every second they were on the screen. Like, it made their deaths that much more meaningful. All right, now I've talked a lot about the changes I liked, but one of the changes in the first episode that I didn't like was them picking people to go into the fold. It just felt completely unnecessary. Like, we already knew Mal and Alina were gonna go into the fold. Why did they have to pick them out of the crowd? Like, what was the point here? Was it to emphasize the danger of the fold? Was it to show character? I'm still not sure. But even though I didn't like this change, I did like Mal's reaction in this change. So in the books, he's not afraid to go into the fold at all. Like, he's not worried. He's just cocky Mal, super comfortable and confident. But in the show, you can tell that he's actually worried and he's just putting on a brave face. Then we get our first look at the crows, and oh my god, they're beyond accurate. We're already getting hints about Jesper's gambling addiction. We get to see the stolen decouple showing their heisting skills without actually telling us anything. We get tidbits about the menagerie, some early Kinej content. And we end the scene with some early foreshadowing.
If we're going to survive a round trip through the fold, we'll need a miracle or two.
But back to Mal and Alina. We see Alina getting discriminated against because she's part Shu. And what I really love about this change is Mal's protectiveness of her. Like, when they don't give her food in line, Mal leaves because of her. When he sneaks into Zoya's tent, it's for Alina.
Some of it's for me.
And I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm actually starting to ship them. And then Alina burns the map so she can join them on the skiff. And what I really love is Mal's reaction.
Tell him you're too sick to go.
I'm never that sick.
And while this might seem like a throwaway line to any casual observer, it means everything to the readers, because it shows us that even though they couldn't physically show Alina changing because of using her powers, because that would have been either extremely unhealthy for Jessie May Lee or extremely expensive for the CGI editors, it shows that they know and they care and they wanted us to know that they know, you know? And it doesn't go unappreciated. Then on the skiff, we have the addition of the blue light, which was a genius way to light what's supposed to be a pitch black scene. And Alexei jumps off the skiff and survives and goes to Ketterdam and sets up the Crow's plot perfectly. But what gets me is that Alexei was able to tell in the pitch black and blinding light, along with however much distance was between him and the skiff, that the Sun Summoner was Alina Starkov.
Alina Starkov.
Really, buddy? Really? I'm not buying it. Moving on to episode Dos, we meet General Kirigan. And this is another change that felt really unnecessary to me. I was like, what? Why? What was wrong with the Darkling? I liked the Darkling, but General Kirigan it is. But the meeting in the tent is so serious. And for what? Like in the books, everyone was like, there's no such thing as a Sun Summoner. Psh, no, that didn't happen. But like in the books, they were like, in the show, I mean, they were like, it happened. It was real. And I was like, what? They kind of laughed at one point, which felt like a nod to the books, but could have been done better. Then we cut to Ketterdam, and we see Kaz lose a fight to Pekka and two of his men. And was anyone else annoyed by this? Because in Crooked Kingdom, he takes on the whole of the Crow Club and wins. So tell me how he lost this fight to Pekka and his two thugs. Yeah. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't. And is anyone else mad that Pekka's not a ginger? We're not going to get the iconic moment. What the heck? But I did love Kaz asking Pekka, have we ever done a deal before? Because, you know. And something I can't get over is the show's attention to specifically cultural details. Like, they worked so hard to flesh out all these different countries, and like a detail as small as how they count their money, I would have never thought of that. Genius. But back to Alina. She's getting carted off in a carriage, the Darkling's carriage, and Mal chases after her. Injured. I'm in love. Then the Fjordans ambush the coach with a fallen tree in the road, and this is like verbatim how it happens in the books, except for the Darkling's entrance. It's just as dramatic in the show, if not more so, except we don't get to see the Darkling blind people with his power. And that was kind of disappointing because we don't get to see it at all in the show, ever. But in the books, it's one of his like go-to moves. But we do get to see him use the cut, which is super fun. And then he and Alina ride off together alone. Scandalous. Then when they finally stop and have a conversation, it goes very differently than the conversation in the books. Because in the books, Alina kind of like asks him about his age and he gets all weird about it. But in the show, she says something along the lines of, I don't want to have my powers anymore. Which I didn't mind because they bring that line full circle, but still. And we find out Inej has a brother?
Who are you looking for? Your parents, a sibling? Sister?
What? I am so curious about that. But then we end the episode with another reference to the meadow. The 1500th reference, I should say. And let me tell you, I'm getting real goddamn sick of that stupid meadow. On to episode 3, Alina has her first vision of the stag. Now, this happens way earlier than anything we see in the books, but what I like about this change is that it makes it feel like the stag was more fated, like it was meant for Alina to find the stag, that she was meant to save it. I liked that. I liked that it felt more foreshadowy. We also get to hear her letters to Mal, which I thought was really smart, a really great character choice, because we really get an insight into who she is as a person. And we get to hear Mal's letters back, which was even better. Then we meet Genya, and can I just say, this bath wasn't nearly long enough for Alina to get clean. But that's besides the point. Genya gives Alina an actual reason to like her.
I don't care that you're part Shu. I care that you look terrible.
And I thought that was a smart move. But also, Alina's not nearly as uncooperative. So their friendship works so much better in the show than it does in the book. However, we get more development of their friendship in the book, whereas the show, we really only get like 4 or 5 interactions with Genya total. So, give and take. And we get to meet Nina, and we find out she was supposed to help the crows sneak into the little palace. What? Again, makes everything feel more fated, like it was supposed to happen that way. And I love that. Something else that I thought was absolutely brilliant was their idea to accelerate the King of Scars plotline of West Ravka wanting to secede, because it just helped tie everything together in a more cohesive way, and it helped connect why the Darkling would have pushed the fold into Novosibirsk. Just such an intelligent move, because it wasn't mentioned in Shadow and Bone once, but the inclusion of it in the show was perfect. But then Alina meets the king, and one thing I really liked about this was that the king was a lot less childish. He wasn't jumping up and down like a little kid all excited. He was more realistically portrayed as a politician. But what I didn't like was the lack of squabbling over who Alina's gonna walk in with, because I feel like it didn't show the Grisha hierarchies in the way that it was supposed to. Like, that scene serves as the first time we see them squabble over who's higher up, who's closer to the Darkling, and we don't really get to see that in the show at all, which I understand is a super small nuanced detail, and that's probably why they didn't include it, but it made a lot of moments not hit the way they should. But then as they're welcoming her into the Grisha, Leigh Bardugo is the first person to give her a hug. Best possible author cameo ever. As we cut back to the crows, we learn how the conductor has been getting through the fold all this time. And I love this because it's something you don't even think about in the books. Like, people would have been finding ways to cross the fold illegally, and the train was the perfect solution. Then we meet Botkin, who nailed his role, especially for only being in the show for 2 minutes. And Alina fights Zoya, and that's pretty book perfect, minus Alina breaking some ribs and plus a vision of the stag. Now, I loved Zoya, still love Zoya, but I thought her role as the show bully was underdeveloped. Every time she made fun of Alina or lashed out at Alina, it didn't really make sense. And I read the books. Then we meet the Apparat, who is perfectly creepy. Nailed that. And he gives Alina the lives of saints.
The lives of the saints.
Then Alina visits Bagra's hut, which is more of a cave. Not really how I imagined it, but I'm not opposed. And Alina starts training with Bagra, who has no patience, which is perfect. They nailed it. But back to the crows, Jesper has his moment to shine. I love this moment. It might be one of my favorite moments in the whole show, but I also just really love Jesper. And we end this episode with another stupid meadow scene. I'm so over it. I'm so over it. But on to episode 4, we get to see Mal's perspective, and this was genius and much needed and appreciated. We get to hear Mal's letters back to Alina.
Dear Alina.
We get to see everything he goes through, and we get to see him getting closer and closer to Alina while she's pulling further and further away. And this was such a heartbreaking and beautiful parallel. Perfection. Then Alina gets offered a black kefta, which she turns down, but I don't really think we're given enough emphasis on this moment, on the Grisha hierarchies in general. Like, nobody really understands what that black color means and what it signifies and why it's so important. So that's something I feel like the show could have done better. And then we get the worst part of the whole show.
Please, call me Alexander.
Why did he give his name? Readers waited 3 books for that name, and now they're just throwing it around willy-nilly. It's not okay. But who cares about that when we have a crow's heist, baby? Let's go! Everything about this was so perfect. Kaz's voiceover, Nesh being the Wraith, Jesper's perfectly timed gunshot. Let's go! The only thing that didn't quite make sense to me was the phosphorus fingerprints, because they left a foot trail. So if anyone could explain that to me in the comments, much appreciated. Now back to Alina's date with Alexander. Now, up to this point, I felt that the exposition in the show was done really, really well, but Alina explaining the story of the Black Heretic felt like a gimme. It felt very exposition-y, and I didn't like that. But we do get to hear the iconic line.
You and I are going to change the world.
So I guess I'm not complaining. Then we see more training with Alina, and I really love seeing her grow in her powers and become more confident, especially on her own, because in the books she's always like, oh, I need an amplifier, I need an amplifier, I need an amplifier. But in the show, she's actually coming into her power on her own, which I loved. But we don't get to see her train anymore with Bakken. We don't get to see her get physically stronger and better at fighting. Like, I wanted to see her earn that Grisha steel. And then Bagra gives Alina the stupid special flashback tea. This just felt gratuitous. Like, could Alina not have a flashback on her own? Come on, people. However, I will say this flashback made Alina's failure of the test make a lot more sense.
I knew the testers used sudden pain to detect Grisha power.
Her injuring herself to avoid the prick of the test made way more sense than her just pushing down her powers because she felt like it. Oh, I will say though, them using pain to indicate Grisha power calls a few plot holes into question. We also get way more scenes of Alina with the Darkling in the show than we ever got in the books. Like, in the books, she has one scene with him by the lake. And that's pretty much it. In this show, she visits him in his rooms, then they have a little date, and like, it's giving her way more of a basis to fall for him. More meadow scenes, blah, blah, blah. And then Mal finds the stag. Now, what I really liked about this was Mal hearing that high-pitched tone when he's around Alina and when he's near the stag.
Then I hear that sound again. Softly.
Because that helps the audience understand what's happening with Mal, as well as provides a little bit of foreshadowing, if you know what I mean. On to episode 5, though, aka the best episode. Alina is actually friends with Nadia and Marie, which was a nice change of pace to her character. Like, she can actually make friends now. Crazy. And then Zhenya says the iconic line.
I want you to be careful.
Of what?
Powerful men.
And we meet David.
Hi.
So David introduces the mirrored gloves, which Alina rejects. Now, I thought this was interesting because in the books, Alina relies heavily on the gloves as part of her power and how she controls it. But in the show, she's just confident and independent enough that she doesn't need them, which I thought was curious, but I also really liked it. Then we cut to the crows, and I adore this scene, okay? Let's watch it. So we see Kaz's point of view here, but we aren't seeing what he is seeing. We're seeing it as a casual observer. And then later, when we see this scene again, we finally see what Kaz sees because he's explaining it to us. And this just works so well in showing us Kaz's intelligence and skill, as Zhenya would say.
Ingenious.
We also get a nice scene showing Jesper's intelligence and his bisexuality. We also get some nods to the book with Butterweek and Zoya being jealous of Alina's black kefta. And we get whatever Ivan and Fedor have going on. But back to Alina. In the books, the Darkling kisses her one night randomly by the lake when he's talking about her lack of power and experience. But in the show, she kisses him before the winter fate. Now, I am not sure how I feel about this change. Because on the one hand, it shows the Darkling's magnetic pull and Alina's draw to him. But on the other hand, it makes him seem less manipulative and predatory. So, you know, jury's still out on whether that was a good change or not. Looking at Zoya, I loved her nod to Inej's heritage because it was also a nod to her own. And did anyone else see Jesper limping away? Is Jesper a bottom? Discuss. Also, when Mal goes to the Darkling's office and points out that sun symbol, did anyone else get like major Rapunzel vibes? Like, oh, I didn't see the antlers. I saw this. It's the sun. Then Alina gets murdered by the conductor, but it turns out it was actually Marie in disguise, which is a very accelerated death for Marie. And we're not following the books anymore. But you know what? This is just the best piece of fan fiction I've ever seen. However, we are back to the book plot when Bagrid convinces Alina to run away by telling her the truth about the Darkling. Now, I'm gonna be honest, I didn't love this scene because I think Alina agrees a little too readily to run away. Because in the show, she's clearly falling for the Darkling, clearly in love with him, has already forgotten about Mal. But in the books, she bumps into Mal and is already like wishing for her old life back, like sad and wanting to go back to her old life and missing Mal. But in the show, she's like, fuck it, you know? So, I don't know. I think she agrees too readily. But then we see Inej's first kill. Oh, it broke my heart. But it was also to save Kaz, so it was perfect. Oh, it was so good. And we round out episode 5 with Alina kidnapping herself, which is technically how it went in the books. She just didn't get in a cart with people that wanted to kidnap her. So, pretty accurate. But also we get to see Jesper being super cocky with Kaz and Inej. I loved it. I love the crows.
Just ask.
Jesper.
Just ask.
In episode 6, Alina flees the crows and runs directly into Mal, which is exactly how it happened in the books. But everything with her and Mal in the woods happens on a very accelerated timeline, which is honestly a good choice because in the books it kind of dragged. However, the biggest distinction between book Mal and show Mal, I think, happens right here.
Even be bothered to reply to a single one of my letters.
I never had a word from you, and I wrote you nearly every single day.
He doesn't ask why he never got her letters. He asks why she never got his. And that is such an important change. And he has the emotional intelligence to say this.
I'm sorry. It took me this long to see you, Alina.
And now I actually ship them, because this was so much more romantic than any kiss they ever shared on the page. We also get more Nina and Matthias, and they're so clearly falling for each other. It's perfection. But the scene that really hurts is right here.
I can't wait till you get trounced by a girl.
Not in this lifetime.
If you know, you know. But we're finally back to the crows, and we get to see them go head to head against some of our favorite Grisha. Ivan versus Jesper. Jesper wins, of course, and we get a nice little reference to his powers yet again. Inej versus Polina, which I don't really care about Polina, but we get to see Inej kill again, which is crazy. And then Kaz versus the Darkling, the showdown we all have wanted to see. And normally, when you think about a fight between a 100-year-old master of darkness and an 18-year-old with a smoke bomb, you wouldn't pick Kaz. Yet he wins and steals the Darkling coach. And we get a nice cameo of the actual Shadow and Bone book. Then we get more Alina and Mal content, and they have this super awkward conversation about Alina's eating habits, which is a super great nod to the books, but just really awkward. Then they decide to go for the stag, and the Darkling pursues them. On to episode 7. Now, overall, I like episode 7, but I'm gonna be honest, I skipped the Darkling flashback. every single time, without fail. It is physically painful for me to rewatch. It just doesn't make sense for his character. There's no way he would have been allowed to fall in love with that healer chick. And what? He studies Morozov's journals for 5 minutes before creating the fold? I'm not buying it. However, I do love this scene.
I made something.
He's like a proud little kid with a drawing that he wants to show his mom. Iconic. Then Alina and Mal find the stag, and Alina says this.
Kirigan didn't want me to have an amplifier.
And I'm not gonna lie, this really threw me off, because in the books, the Darkling was extremely adamant about Alina having an amplifier. But in the show, he doesn't mention it to her at all. So I'm not really sure why they changed this, or what was the purpose of the change. Was it to make Alina seem more powerful on her own? I'm not sure. But before Alina can do anything, the Darkling attacks. And this is all pretty book accurate, except they keep injuring Mal. Like, how is this kid still alive? Then they put the collar on her, but they also put this weird circular thing into the Darkling's hand. And while I think it was really weird and kind of ugly, it was a very, very smart move because it physically showed the connection between the Darkling and Alina instead of it just being all symbolic. Also though, the collar going into her skin, not at all what I pictured and so much more violating. Switching over to the crows, we get another nice reference to Jesper's power.
Jesper fixed your cane.
We get an adorable Knej moment.
No saint ever watched over me. Not like you have.
And we get this. They're not touching. It's perfect. Back at camp, Alina gets a visit from Jenya, who's dressed in red officially, which just doesn't hold the power that it should because they didn't put the emphasis on Grisha hierarchies that they could have. Then, instead of Mal and Alina having a romantic night together before they enter the fold, the Darkling has a chat with Mal. Now, this is so much better than what they have in the books. And then Mal escapes with the help of the goat. That was a nice callback. That was a nice touch. Then we got this iconic line.
Fine. Make me your villain.
And this iconic line.
No mourners.
No funerals.
And then we're into the fold and on to the final episode. We open with Nina and Matthias, and this goes about how it should, but I am very interested in the long-lasting effects of Nina being branded a traitor to the Grisha. I also loved how this scene showed the culture of Kerch for non-readers. But back to the main event, all of our favorite characters crossing a skiff through the fold together. And this isn't entirely book accurate, but remember how I said when I was reading the book, I really wanted a battle? I was expecting this to be like a fight, like a battle. Well, the show gave it to me. We get to see Zoya and Inej battle it out together. We get to see Kaz save Jesper's life. And we get to see Mal and the Darkling duke it out in the sands while Alina gets their skiff to safety. Then we get a nice heartfelt moment with everybody. Alina tells Inej to keep being the Wraith, which justifies her faith and her abilities. The crows decide not to kidnap Alina, who settles their debt with her jewels, which, not gonna lie, was a little cheap, but I'll allow it. Zoya has already switched sides, which makes me curious about her role in season 2, shall we say. And most importantly, Mal and Alina swear they're going to come back and tear down the fold, which is so much better than in book 1 when they just leave and they make no promises to come back. We get a nice tease about Nina joining the crows and a tip as to what their next heist might be, since we know it's not going to be the Ice Core heist. And we end the show with the Nichi Voya. And oh my god, they're so much more terrifying than I ever imagined. But that is it for my thoughts on season 1 of Shadow and Bone on Netflix. What did you all think? Did you like the changes? Did you hate them? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. And don't forget to like and subscribe and hit that bell to stay up to date on all my upcoming videos. And as you might have noticed in this video, my lovely First Army shirt, which if you like it, you can head over to my Etsy shop at Box, link in the description down below, and buy one for yourself. It'll be in a Shadow and Bone box, which includes a pair of Second Army gloves and a Grishaverse map. But that's all I've got for this time. Thanks for watching.